According to a new report put out by the American Legislative Exchange Council, economic prospects are brighter in the South than in any other region of the country. With the exception of Louisiana, every southern state in America is now ranked in the top half of the country in terms of economic outlook. The author of this piece, Douglas Carswell, he resides in Mississippi. And he says in his home state, he saw Mississippi rose 5 places this year and is now ranked as having the 22nd most promising economic outlook in America. It is the traditional business centers of California, Illinois, and New York that are the laggards in terms of economic outlook. So keep in mind, this is prospective, right? Not perspective, but prospective. This is just forward-looking future economic prospects, so it's predictive. What explains these predictions and what explains the emerging Southern success story? It's got a lot to do with low taxes, limited government, and liberty. The 3 L's, as I now like to call them. Low taxes, limited government, and liberty. In 2022, Mississippi's Tax Freedom Act significantly cut the state income tax. I'm not going to go into the details, but it is very similar to what North Carolina did when Republicans won control of the legislature 10 years ago. Mississippi adopted a universal occupational licensing law as well, which sounds wonky, technocratic and all, but what it does is pretty straightforward. It takes the red tape out of the labor market. It helps to reduce it. How? Glad you asked. If you come from some other state and you've got a certification in that other state to, cut hair or something, you don't need to get recertified in Mississippi. If you got certification in another state, then that counts in Mississippi too. It transfers over like a driver's license, which makes sense. ALEC reports also that free market reforms that have spread from one southern state to the next, and some southern states have started emulating their neighbors. Look, this is what has driven North Carolina and the Republicans here. They look at Tennessee, they look at Virginia, they look at Georgia, and they look at South Carolina. And we know it here in Charlotte. I remember, ever since I was a reporter, when I started as a reporter down in Rock Hill and then came to WBT in Charlotte, we were always having these stories. They were constantly trying to compete across the state lines, and you're dealing with these different, tax structures and benefits and such. And with both states, you got the capital of South Carolina way down the road in Columbia, haven't always been as responsive to the needs of the York County area, right? And same in North Carolina, where, folks up in Raleigh tend not to think anything, this side of the state exists. It gets more pronounced, by the way. Like when you go like west of Hickory, I shouldn't even say Hickory. But yeah, 321 basically. You go west of 321, I don't think Raleigh even knows that part of the state exists. Which is very weird because it used to be, Asheville used to be, I believe it was the second most, if not the most populous city in the state before the Great Depression. I think it even was bigger than Charlotte at the time, if I recall correctly. Or maybe it was second to Charlotte. But yeah, they went bankrupt because they went on a spending spree. They went bankrupt. The mayor killed himself, and they ended up going into debt to the state, which they finally ended up paying back in like the 80s. And that's why their downtown never got built up. They were in so much debt for so long. And now everybody's like, oh, look at all the preservation of the architecture. And like, yeah, it's not exactly an intentional thing that happened there. But anyway, growth and prosperity have started to spread because we are competing with the other states on our borders. And so when we looked at South Carolina, we're like, okay, they've got a tax rate of what? Okay, let's get below that. Tennessee's got a tax rate of what? Let's get below that.